The Lady Luck was a 55-foot motor yacht that looked like it had been through a war and lost. Her once gleaming white hull was stained with streaks of rust and green algae, and her teak deck was gray and splintered from years of neglect in the far corner of the Pelican Bay Marina. To most, she was an eyesore. To me, Elias Thorne, she was a midlife crisis I could actually afford. I had spent my entire savings and a significant portion of my sanity buying her at a closed auction from the city's maritime lien department. The previous owner had disappeared 3 years ago, leaving the Lady Luck to rot. After 2 weeks of grueling paperwork, I finally held the keys and the deed. On a humid Tuesday morning, I pulled my truck up to the dock, loaded with a generator, industrial cleaning supplies, and a heavy-duty crowbar. I was ready to start the demolition phase of the renovation. The marina manager, a salty old man named Gus, watched me from his shack. "You sure about that one, Elias?" he called out, spitting a bit of tobacco. "She's got a heavy soul." "She's just got a lot of grime, Gus," I shouted back, feeling the nervous excitement of a man about to spend 6 months covered in fiberglass dust. I stepped onto the deck. The boat groaned under my weight, but the hull felt solid. I reached the sliding glass door to the main cabin. It was locked, as expected. I took out my heavy-duty bolt cutters to snip the rusted padlock I'd seen during my initial inspection, but I stopped dead. The padlock was gone. In its place was a shiny, brand-new deadbolt. "What the?" I muttered. I tried the handle. It was locked from the inside. Suddenly, I heard the muffled sound of a television. Then, the unmistakable scent of frying bacon wafted through the salt air. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had a squatter moved in? I hammered on the glass door. "Hello, this is my boat. Is someone in there?" Silence fell inside. Then the heavy curtains, expensive, velvet-looking things that definitely hadn't been there 2 weeks ago, parted slightly. A woman's face peered out. She looked to be in her late 40s with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a look of absolute indignation. She slid the door open just 3 inches, kept the chain on, and glared at me. "Can I help you? You're trespassing on private property." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Trespassing? Ma'am, I'm Elias Thorne. I bought this yacht at auction. I have the title in my truck. Who are you?" She scoffed, a sound so sharp it could have cut glass. "I'm Sandra, and this is my family's home. You need to leave before I call the police. You're harassing a homeowner." "Homeowner, this is a boat, a derelict boat I bought from the city." "Sandra, who is it?" a man's voice called out. A tall, thin man in a polo shirt stepped up behind her, holding a spatula. "Is this another one of those inspectors?" "He says he bought the boat, Gerald," Sandra said, rolling her eyes as if I were a telemarketer selling fake insurance. "Listen, Gerald, Sandra, whoever you are," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I have the legal deed to the Lady Luck. I don't know how you got in here, but you have 1 hour to pack your things." Gerald sighed, looking more annoyed than guilty. "Look, buddy, we've put a lot of work into this place. New locks, a generator link-up, we even scrubbed the mold out of the master suite. You can't just walk up and claim it. We've been here for 3 months. Squatters' rights, adverse possession, look it up." I was floored. They weren't desperate people looking for a roof. They were wearing designer leisure wear. They had a flat-screen TV visible on the bulkhead. "That's not how adverse possession works on a federally documented vessel," I yelled. Gus, get over here." Gus lumbered down the dock, looking pained. "What's the racket?" "Gus, did you know these people were living on my boat?" Gus looked at Sandra, then back at me. "They told me they were the cousins of the original owner, said they were here to protect the asset until the legalities were cleared. They've been paying the monthly slip fee, Elias. I didn't have a reason to kick 'em." Sandra smirked. "Thank you, Gus. Now, Mr. Thorne, if you don't leave, I will call my brother. He's a lawyer." I realized then that I wasn't dealing with a simple misunderstanding. I was dealing with a Karen in her natural habitat, a place she had claimed through sheer, unearned confidence. The next 3 days were a legal nightmare. I couldn't just drag them out. The local police claimed it was a civil matter because they had established residency. My lawyer, a man named Miller who charged by the minute, told me the same thing. "It's a loophole, Elias, because they've been paying the slip fees and have mail delivered there. You have to formally evict them. It'll take 30 to 60 days. I'm paying a mortgage on a house I can't live in because I'm renovating this boat, and I'm paying the dockage for them to live in luxury. I was livid. I decided to play their game. If I couldn't get them out legally yet, I would make their renovation a living hell. The next morning, I arrived at 6:00 a.m. with a team of 4 contractors, mostly my loudest, largest friends from the gym. I didn't need to go inside to start the exterior work. "All right, boys," I shouted loud enough to wake the dead. "Start the sandblasting, we need to take this hull down to the bare fiberglass today." The roar of the industrial air compressors began. It was a deafening, bone-shaking whine. Within minutes, the cabin door flew open. Sandra emerged in a silk robe looking hysterical. Stop that right now, we're sleeping." "Construction hours start at 6, Sandra," I yelled over the noise, wearing bright orange earplugs. "I'm just improving my property." By noon, my friend Mike was testing the foghorn every 10 minutes. By 2:00 p.m., we had set up a staging area on the dock right in front of their windows where we began mixing foul-smelling marine epoxy. The Karen was not going down without a fight. She called the police 3 times that day. Each time I showed the officers my work permits and my deed. Since I wasn't entering the vessel, they couldn't stop me from working on the exterior. The breaking point came on the 3rd day. I had learned from Gus that they were illegally siphoning water from the marina's main line because their onboard tanks were shot. I had the marina shut off the specific valve leading to my slip for emergency repairs. That evening, as I was packing up my tools, the family emerged. It wasn't just Sandra and Gerald. 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, trailed behind them looking miserable and clutching iPhones that were likely dead. "You are a monster," Sandra hissed. She looked haggard. The lack of air conditioning in the Florida heat combined with the smell of epoxy and the constant noise had broken the facade. "We have nowhere else to go, our house was foreclosed on. We are a respectable family." The respectable part stuck in my throat. "Sandra, you're not a victim. You saw an abandoned boat and thought you could steal a lifestyle you didn't pay for. You've been living on my dime for weeks." Gerald looked at the ground. "We just needed a win, man. Everything went south this year. We thought nobody was coming for this boat." For a second, I felt a pang of guilt. I looked at the kids. They looked exhausted. But then I looked at the Lady Luck. She was a mess. They hadn't been renovating her. They had been treating her like a trash bin. There were bags of refuse piled on the aft deck, and I could see deep scratches in the mahogany trim from where they'd moved in their furniture. "I'll give you a choice," I said, leaning against my truck. "I have a moving van coming tomorrow morning at 8:00 a.m. I will pay for a week at the Staybridge Suites in town. I will pay for 1 month of a storage unit for your stuff. If you are off my boat and gone by 9:00 a.m., I won't sue you for the damages or the back rent." Sandra opened her mouth to argue, to demand more, no doubt, but Gerald put a hand on her shoulder. "We'll take it," he said quietly. The next morning was the most satisfying day of my life. I watched as Gerald and a disgruntled Sandra hauled out their designer coffee maker, their velvet curtains, and their plush rugs. The teenagers didn't even look back. They seemed relieved to be heading to a place with actual plumbing. As the van pulled away, Gus walked over. "Well, you got him out. You want a beer?" "Later, Gus," I said, stepping onto the boat. The smell inside was a mix of expensive perfume and rotting leftovers. It was a disaster. They had painted over the original teak with cheap white latex paint. They had drilled holes in the dashboard to mount their TV. It was heartbreaking. I spent the next 6 months in a blur of sweat and sawdust. I stripped the white paint away, revealing the beautiful grain beneath. I rewired the entire electrical system, replaced the twin diesel engines, and spent weeks hand-polishing every bit of brass. There were moments late at night when the boat was quiet and the moon reflected off the water when I thought about Sandra. I wondered if she'd ever realize that you can't just take a life, you have to build it. A boat isn't just a house, it's a living thing that requires respect and care. She wanted the status of the yacht without the soul of the sailor. By the time spring rolled around, the Lady Luck lived up to her name. She was stunning. The hull was a deep midnight blue that shone like a mirror. The decks were honey gold teak and the interior smelled of lemon oil and salt air. On her maiden voyage, I invited Gus. We took her out past the breakwater, the engines purring like lions. The wind caught my hair, and for the first time in years I felt a sense of pure, unadulterated peace. I looked back at the marina at the spot where I'd first found a family of strangers living in my dream. They were long gone, likely off trying to convince someone else they deserved something for nothing. I gripped the mahogany wheel. The renovation was finished, but the journey was just beginning. I hadn't just bought an abandoned yacht, I had rescued her. And in the process, I think she might have rescued me too. I turned the bow toward the open horizon, leaving the drama of the dock far behind. The Lady Luck was finally home.